Welcome back, everybody, to a new Cedar Flags episode. This one is long overdue, I'll admit, and it actually is a fairly long episode. So yeah, I actually had a vacation in there, and then when I got back, we were working on this project. And honestly, this is a classic Deke moment where I bit off a project that's probably better suited for 2 or 3 episodes. So yeah, you're probably getting about I'd say 2 episodes worth of content in one. So yeah, this one is a fairly large project, if you will. So as you can see, well, maybe not. As you probably know from the title of this episode, we are working on the hotel build. So this one started out with a pool build just basically because I had absolutely no idea what I was doing for this, but I knew I wanted to have a pool in there somewhere. So as you can see, we're going through and building a pool. We're doing the trick where we actually dig a hole under some roof pieces, and then that allows us to get some water. And it was a little finicky. It really didn't want to go up to the right spot. I had to really try to smooth out the pit before I could get the water up to the correct spot. But we have some walls around the pool to reflect, an in-ground pool wall situation, and I also have some roof tiles underneath, which you'll see a little later on that those end up being the right choice for that build. And I will, mention that the pool is actually correct in that it is 9 feet at the deep end. So it was one of those little details that I figured, you know what, let's put that in. I really didn't know how deep to make a pool, and I figured I could set the grid height down to 1 foot, and I was like, well, this is just too logical. So we went ahead and we made a 9-foot deep pool, but eventually it'll actually have a shallow section. But we're over here now. We're working on the hotel itself. Now, you'll see throughout this time lapse that this hotel actually took on a couple iterations, and I keep saying iterations. That's kind of just how I build in these games. I had a really basic idea of what I wanted in the hotel, and it really started to take shape. You'll see that here specifically when we're working on the guest side of I guess they're just like windows for the rooms for the guests. But yeah, I was starting to build with all these pieces. I really kind of wanted to incorporate the pieces that we used for the second entrance to the park, and I loved those pieces, but really, you'll see in a little bit, I end up going back on that. So we're really just sketching stuff out right now with all these pieces, and then we're gonna go ahead and actually change a lot of this. So really, we're just getting a rough draft right now for all of this, but I will say that I really love how this turns out. So as you can see, we have I think they're meant for the roller coasters, the little pieces that go over and under the station, so the roller coaster can actually go out on the track and not clip through the wall. We have those, and we created our own window cavity in the wall there. And really, we took a piece of glass and then a billboard behind that. And the billboards that they gave us actually came with some stock imagery, and one of them was a curtain. So it looked like a pretty good thing for the hotel window, so that worked. And then I found these little shutters, I think they are, and I put those horizontally underneath the window. So if you actually look at a lot of hotels, they'll have their own air conditioning per room. So it's this looks pretty good in my mind. I don't know. I really hope it looks good to you guys as well. But it was a little disproportionate with the doors. I'm trying to get a door situated here now too, and it just wasn't working. I really still don't like a lot of the door options that we have in this game. It's really weird because some of the earlier doors are just massive. They're huge doors, and I think at some point as they started creating more and more for this game, more and more assets, I think the designers realized, you know what, maybe we should try to. It's kind of like a running joke, the Planet Coaster scale. I think they realized maybe we should scale it down, pardon the pun, and some of the newer doors actually look pretty good, and when you put them up next to an actual person in the game, they're actually scaled fairly well. And actually those new pieces that we did, the ticket entrance, or the second entrance, those scaled pretty well. So it really wasn't working for me on the hotel, so we end up making a sliding glass door there. From a distance, it looks way better. I actually have a 3-dimensional curtain asset in there. I think it's animated, but I've turned all that off. But yeah, it ends up looking good. And funny enough, I actually went through and I Googled this. I Googled hotel room, and it's very, very difficult to find a picture of a hotel room from like the door facing in. So I have a picture of an actual hotel room with a couple beds in there. You probably will never notice it if I didn't tell you it. And you probably are going to have a hard time trying to find that in this time lapse. Hopefully I'll remember to show you guys that when we go into the live part at the end of this episode. But yeah, just a little trick in there. I tried to do something a little cool for that. I really didn't want to spend as much time as I ended up spending on that. It took me forever to find a picture of that, and it works, but it's a little awkward with the angle and everything. But like I said, this is one of those parts of the build, or parts of the park rather, that are so far away that I didn't want to put like a lot of detail into all this stuff. I really felt like this is more or less just going to be a very distant background thing for the park, and I've really been trying to keep that in mind for a lot of builds throughout the park. I don't know if you guys like that or dislike that. I think it actually ends up making the build for this park a little bit more expansive, maybe, because we're not so heavily detailing every little thing or big thing or whatever you want to call it throughout the park. So we have a lot more room to do a lot more things. They're just not as heavily detailed as some of the other people I've watched on YouTube, which I think is a fair trade-off, and you guys seem to be liking it, so we're gonna keep with it. But as I've been rambling on, you saw me actually go through and change some of the colors of the panel pieces that we have. I actually incorporated some of the wood pieces that we've used throughout the park. I really love the modern wood pieces. I really think I might just have like an affinity for modern wood of some kind in like design. I really like modern stuff. I don't like super traditional architecture, and that's something I think I've discovered about myself personally throughout the years as I've been building things in video games from like way back and when I used to play The Sims a lot. But yeah, anyway, we changed some of those pieces. We actually got some of the coloring scheme from other pieces of the park. I think you actually saw me go over and grab some of the color palette from that little Bayside restaurant that we have. And we're really just trying to build... I don't know. I had a picture pulled up on my other monitor as I was going through this, trying to get some inspiration, because really what we have here is a hotel, but it's leaning a little bit more toward a resort. So I think we tried to more or less keep some of those resort themes going through here, especially in the materials that we used for this hotel. But I think it really looks a lot more like just a modern hotel build that you'd probably see off the side of a highway, more out of necessity than anything. But we're trying to couple those two types of hotels together, and I think we achieved that here. You actually saw me pull this whole roofing canopy thing over from that restaurant. This was one of those weird little strokes of brilliance I think I had. You saw the original little covered canopy thing that we have for the drop-off area. There might be like a word for this. I'm not really even sure. It's like the grand entrance almost for the hotel. So cars can drive up and, drop people off without having to get out in the rain or whatever. And this ends up looking a lot better than what we had originally. I think if we went with the original parts that I had out there, it would have looked super generic. And I thought I really wanted to make something a little bit more unique, because it is an amusement park. They would probably invest in their hotel to make it more of an experience. Everything that an amusement park does is focused on you, the customer, and making that an experience. So that's really what I wanted to go for here, and I think we achieve it. But yeah, it's just I thought just like pulling pieces from the park. I think I've realized this a lot, but I think I've also forgot it a lot. Like we've built a lot of stuff into this park. So I think a lot of times I'll come into a new project like this hotel and I'll be like, oh man, we got to come up with this whole new thing. It's going to take forever. And then I realize like, hey, wait a minute. We have all of these pieces over somewhere in the park. They look great together. We know this. Why not just bring them over here? A lot of the work's already done. So yeah, that's what I did here. And as you can see, a lot of the work wasn't already done. There was a lot of tweaking that had to happen here to make this work. And those little cross beams that we have underneath this whole thing supporting everything is one of those little things. And then some of it wasn't exactly like super crisp in the way it was designed. So we'll probably not mention that to anybody. if anybody asks. I think the restaurant looks great, and we're never gonna have to retouch it ever. But moving those pieces over here was a little out of whack, so we had to make it correct. But yeah, this was a lot of time spent on one little thing here, and it was one of those weird things that like it took a while to get it right, but when it's right, it looks great. But it's just so awkward because we're building around all this pavement. You can see me trying to go through and put some support beams here. I'm not exactly sure, like from a structural standpoint, what this would do. I think it would probably be fine, but I could be way off. It just seems like there's a lot of material on this and in all the wood trims and everything. That can get kind of heavy, and the supports that we have for it aren't exactly the best. But I think it works out. I don't think we're going to be judged too hard on what we did here. But the entrance here was basically a focus. Just because we have the guest spawner back here, as you probably remember. So we're going to have a lot of people actually walking out of these doors. So I tried to make these a little bit more detailed than probably the other parts of the hotel, so you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through. But again, I was talking about these doors earlier, and these are fairly scaled doors, if that makes sense. They're nice. I'm trying to go through here and try to find some other doors that might work a little better. They really aren't great, a lot of them, and I think an actual hotel would have sliding doors here. We don't have sliding doors, unfortunately. And I really didn't want to make like a glass door here that just isn't open. So it was kind of one of those choices that I had to make. And I opted for a fairly decently scaled door instead of a glass door. I think basically all hotels would probably at this point have like a glass door where you can see what's going on, so you don't just like run into people as you're going in and out. But yeah, I think we really didn't have too many options here, so we found one that worked, and I liked it, and we ended up sticking with it. They're open permanently, but I guess that's just part of what we have to do for this part of the park to get people able to go in and out. Yeah, as you can see right now, this whole thing is basically modular, and it was kind of built that way on purpose because I really didn't want to have to build all of this uniquely. And when you look at a hotel, they're fairly modular in their design anyway, so we're mirroring what we did on the other side, and then we're basically just gonna invert it on the other side of the hotel. So as you can see, those are going into place now. I actually have these saved. I don't know, maybe I should upload these to the workshop or something. This building is probably one of the largest buildings well, definitely by volume, this is the largest building I've made in this game. But I think piece-wise, like piece count it's probably up there as well. I think there's probably close to 9,000 pieces in this, if not just under. So yeah, there's a ton going on here. And as usual, there are actually multiple buildings going on when we go toward the later part of this time lapse and we start doing the outdoor areas. But yeah, the main actual hotel is pretty much all, just one building. So it's a big shell, not much going on inside, which is fine. I really didn't want to have to detail all that. Like theoretically, I could have actually detailed all of the rooms so they were all actually there, especially on like just one side, but it's just not worth it. It's so not worth it. From a distance, this looks great. And I actually had a lot of people comment, I should mention, I think it was a couple episodes ago, but there were a lot of people when I asked like how many parking spots should a hotel have. A lot of people giving advice, and it's really, really awesome, but also kind of weird. Like I didn't really expect anyone to actually know how many parking spots a hotel should have. And some people came through and they're like, hey, it needs to have one hotel per room or whatever, per however much space is in the hotel. And it actually helped. I think we have close to 120 rooms in this hotel, maybe, if I remember correctly. I think that still fit within the parking lot that we had, but you'll see toward the end of this time lapse, we actually go through and we just add a lot more parking. It was just something that I felt like probably needed to be there. And even if it didn't need to be there, even if we had enough parking for all of this to like be legit, I just felt like having a little bit more parking back here would probably make sense just for the people who might, be coming to the park and they're not staying at the hotel, but they just came in here they're just parking back here, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, as you've seen, I've been doing a little bit of trim work up on the top of the hotel. Again, didn't really want to go super over the top detailed with all the trim and stuff on this hotel. So really just wanted to make this look a little bit better. There was a really weird thing. So when you stack a lot of the same wall tiles on top of each other, the shadowing gets very patterned. You can see like exactly how the sun hits every unique little piece of wall. And I really didn't like that. So we ended up dividing that part up and we ended up putting a couple of fake glass pieces up there. I figure that's probably like a staircase or something over there and people would be able to see outside there. And it ended up looking pretty good. And what I'm doing right now with the trim, the original design looked very much like a Tudor type style, and I really didn't want that to happen. I'm not a huge fan of that style, so I needed to eliminate that. So we eliminated some of the vertical not cross sections, but the pillars that we had there. And eventually we just ended up framing out the windows. I think this looks a lot better. It looks way more in style with what we've done throughout the park. And as you can see, it was probably one of those things that I should have thought before I ended up making the entire wing of this hotel. I should mention there are 3 wings of this hotel, but yeah, it's one of those things I didn't really notice until I had everything out there. So I had to delete most of it and then recopy all of it. And again, the modular thing pays off here because we really are able to just like stack all this on top of each other. It was pretty nice, but of course, as I was going through it, I saw a lot of like little imperfections in my building. Like I had a couple things overlaid, like a couple wall tiles were clipped into the other ones. Ended up fixing all of that, and it just looks a lot better. And then of course we had to go through and adjust all these windows again. But yeah, this turned out pretty good. This was a massive project, but it was very intimidating. Like I said, I was sitting basically for like two or 3 days. I would boot up the game and be like, all right, I got to make this hotel, right? I'm going to do it this way. And I start to build and it just wasn't coming together. So I think I just having like a weird creative week when I just couldn't think of how to do this. And eventually it starts piecing itself together. I think I've talked about this in the past where parts just start coming together and things just start to basically build themselves almost. So I really like how this turns out. And it ends up being, I think, a decent size. If anything, it might be a little bit too big for a hotel, for like an amusement park. But then again, maybe not. If we look around this area, I guess there's just mountains everywhere. Maybe this is like a straight up resort or really remote area. So this hotel is going to have a ton of people coming to it just as a destination. So maybe we have the right size hotel. I think it's fine. I mean, maybe you guys, I know there are some people who watch that have worked at like a Cedar Point or an amusement park somewhere. So maybe you guys can chime in with what you guys think, if this is over the top or if it's fine. I think I settled on 4 stories tall. I figured that was tall enough. Like it's still very tall in terms of a building, but it's not like over the top. If I started doing like 6 stories high, I think that would be way too much. 3 stories would have felt fine, I think, and then anything lower would have been just too small. So I think we pretty much got this exactly correct. And I put little hotel modules into all of these rooms, as you saw. I really didn't have to do that, but I figured I really wanted to know how many rooms we had for this hotel. So as I copied all of these modules over, we actually ended up with the correct amount of rooms without having to actually go through and count them. So that was kind of nice. But then in the end, I had to actually go through and grab all of the modules and pull them in because it was too far. Apparently the hotel foyer or whatever it's called in this game, like the lobby for people to actually go in, and get absorbed into the Planet Coaster universe as they stay in a hotel room, that only goes a very, very small distance. It's really weird. It's almost like too small, I feel like. So we had to actually pull all those modules out and then go ahead and group them tightly into the hotel, and then I could connect them all up. And I think I connected all of them. And if not, I think I probably didn't connect maybe 20 of them because there are only 100 that can be connected. But yeah, we're pretty much done building the basic building of the hotel now at this point. We have to go through and add a little bit of property around it. So like I said, we're going to be adding some parking lots to this build, but first we had to actually add a couple little entrances for the hotel. I'm really not well versed in like how hotels operate. I've stayed in hotels before, but it's not one of those things I've studied. So we have a couple side entrances, and I figure you probably would be able to get into the hotel if you're a guest there through these entrances, but the main lobby would probably be near that main parking structure that we had. But yeah, this was a couple side entrances. Actually, we have 4 altogether around the building, and we were building a couple of these access stairways and dragging them around here. I think this was a fair little thing to do for all of this because of the way that this was built. It's kind of up on a hill almost, and I think that was done because of my original plan to put the guest walking path. I don't know why I said walking path. The path for the guests. I wanted to have stairs because I felt like a hotel would have some stairs. It's like more of a grand entrance almost. So we ended up doing that, and it kind of was weird because all of the terrain was then lower on these areas. So we had to actually build some stairs up to doors, which was fine. Not a big deal. But eventually we're going to have all of these parking lots coming over here as well. So we're adding a ton of parking. I just felt like it made a little bit more sense. This building is so, I think, tall maybe, and it's ominous almost. It's very tall and just overshadowing. And so I felt like having parking around the entire area was probably better than just having it up front and then having people have to walk all the way back to their wing to go grab their stuff out of their car or go back to their room or whatever. So actually some of these trees back here, since I've expanded the park boundaries so much, some of the trees are actually locked. I had to go through and go ahead and delete those through the scenario editor. But yeah, I actually did all of this parking lot on stream. It was great to have people. I think I had quite a few people actually showed up for this stream. It was pretty fun. It's always great to have a bunch of people here to help me do stuff on stream, just because it's this, like, stuff like this, while it's interesting in a way, it's also very tedious and boring. Like, just basically rerouting traffic in Planet Coaster. That doesn't exist, you know? We didn't really need to do this at all, but it's one of those things that doing this makes it so much more real looking, and it's really awesome. It actually extends this property out too. It's kind of just like all these paths and all these things make this area look so much more alive almost. It's really cool to see, like, oh, people would park here and they'd have to walk, and they can get over this crosswalk and over this little ramp and then into the hotel. It makes it feel so alive, even though no one's ever going to be walking back here in game. So it's one of those things that it's just really, if I do this on my own, it's so boring. But having people there to chat with me, it's so much more fun. And I think it's interesting. I've always said this. This is one of those games that I don't think personally I would really watch people stream. But then again, like, I have all these people who show up to my streams, and it's interesting. I appreciate you guys so much, because even though it's something that I probably wouldn't personally tune into all the time, you guys seem to love it, and that's why I keep streaming all this stuff. And the link to my Twitch is over in the description underneath this video. I will say that. I always say that. But yeah, it's one of those things that it just makes this so much nicer. But yeah, as I've been babbling on here, we've been doing some of that tedious parking lot work. Again, not reinventing the wheel here. This is one of those things that I was like, all right, we definitely don't want to have to go through here and build all of these. We have all of these turns already. We have all of the pieces sitting right in front of us. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel? We don't. So taking a lot of the little pieces that we had, a lot of these planter beds outlining the asphalt for the parking lot and the road network system, whatever you want to call it. And of course, all these crosswalks. We had all this. And then we just basically had to figure out, like, oh, I needed a left turn. So I went and grabbed a left turn from over in the existing parking lot. And then, of course, I put this in here, and it just basically is plug and play at this point. There was a little bit of making things work, but more or less I could just figure out that, oh, I just need a big straight section of these planters, so I'd go grab them and pull them over. I think if we actually go back and compare this parking lot to the original parking lot that we did for this park, I think the difference would be day and night. I think this parking lot looks so good, and I think the old parking lot is very bland. But at the same time, I think a lot of the amusement park and theme parks of the world actually have very generic parking. Like, they're basically just hugely paved areas that they guide cars into. They have parking spaces outlined or whatever, but more or less, it's just a massive area for people to park. It's not supposed to be this big show type thing. It's not supposed to be really intricate. But around the hotel, I think it's one of those things that if you were to park over here as a guest, you'd love to see all of these paths, mostly because there's going to be a lot of people walking out around here. I guess that's not to say that there aren't a lot of people walking in the main parking lot, but I feel like in the main parking lot, most of the theme parks or amusement parks, you're going to have a lot of foot traffic early on in the day and then a lot of foot traffic at the end of the day. I feel like in a hotel, you're going to see more even traffic throughout the day. So really protecting the guests as they're walking around is a priority here. And you're just going to feel like, oh, they care enough about these parking lots that the room and the service is going to be great in the hotel itself. So, yeah, I don't know why the parking lot is all of a sudden so interesting to me. It's just one of those things in this game that really we didn't need to do at all. And it just adding this really, like, I think it was a turning point in this series for me, at least, as I was building this. I think as soon as we expanded the park boundaries and really pushed all the mountains away, it looked so much more like an actual theme park. And I think, or amusement park, whatever you want to call it. We don't have a super lot of theming going on in our park. So I guess technically we would be a little bit more of an amusement park. But yeah, it's just one of those things. As soon as that opened up, you saw all the space and it just added that little bit of realism that actually went a huge way. So yeah, it's really cool to see all this. It's not necessary whatsoever. We have no cars in the parking lot at all, and that was actually a conscious decision between people, I think in the comments or in the, I don't remember where I asked it. I think it was during the episode, but we basically don't want to put a bunch of cars in here taking up assets for the game and having the game need to load all this stuff. So yeah, right now we don't have any cars in our parking lot, unfortunately. It would look a little bit better, I think, if we had some cars back here. But like I said, I think if when the series is, quote, ended, we'll go through and actually put some parked cars down and take some cinematic shots of it all. But, and I say quote ended because I've said this a couple times. I think once this series is done, like we've completed most of the park, I think what's going to happen is that every now and then we might jump back into the park. Like if I feel like, oh, I don't know, I'll probably be playing like Planet Zoo and some other games at that time in the future here. But if I feel like, you know what, today I really want to build a new roller coaster, maybe I'll go back into this and do like a one-off episode here or there. So I don't know if this park is ever going to be done, but it is like there are a couple things that I feel like I could do later on. Maybe not as, it's not like part of the plans now, but like I feel like we could, even now that we have this parking lot road all the way back here, I feel like we could have another road going all the way around to the other side of the map and then have like a little campground area back there with like rental cabins and stuff. I feel like a lot of amusement parks do that kind of stuff too. But that's one of those projects that I don't really plan on doing, but maybe sometime in the future when I'm bored and I really want to get back into Planet Coaster, I'll go ahead and do something like that. So yeah, I don't know. This what we've been doing right now is just trying to detail out some of this area that we have built here. We have a bunch of planter beds and we're actually just trying to get some shrubs in there. It was kind of an awkward space for some of this stuff just because I really didn't want to block the view of all of these rooms. So if you have a room on the first floor, actually, I think technically it would be the second floor. Yeah, I think actually a lot of hotels I think operate like that. A lot of the common areas will be in the first floor, like the pools and the gyms and whatever. They'll be down on the first floor, and then rooms will start kind of on the second floor. So we had the guests on the lower. I guess the point that I was trying to make was that I didn't want to block some of the guests' rooms' views out of their window with super tall trees, and so I was pretty conscientious about not putting taller trees to block views. And really, I don't know. We're over here now doing a couple little areas here. These are the public areas, or the utility areas rather. I have a couple new duct work type things that I was watching a Silverette video and he had these and I really wanted them. So I went and I picked them up off the workshop. Some aircon vents and stuff like that. I put one in these giant things over here. Technically, I think it's a power generating unit, but I felt like we probably could dress it up like an air conditioning unit. And I was actually going to go and put more air conditioning around the area, but I figured out, hey, wait a minute. All these rooms have their own air conditioning, so I didn't need to do that. So that was kind of nice. But it's always kind of interesting to see in this game some like utility work on the buildings that you're building. So real life buildings will have this. A lot of amusement parks will try to hide some of this stuff too. So it's one of those things that it just kind of adds a little bit of the realism there. But that was the only real one we had for this building, I guess. Probably could have put more in, but really didn't want to, I guess. But no, we're working now on the pool area. And as you can see, it was kind of interesting. We're not actually going to finish this pool area. So really, this hotel build isn't actually done just yet. So yeah, we still have a little bit of, like, I really want to put like a cabana or a bar type thing around over here. So we'll end up doing that. The pool itself, though, is one thing that we are doing in this episode. And as you can see, I put some stairs in and it just really wasn't cutting it. We had the really deep pool. We had a 9-foot pool all the way around. So what we ended up doing was putting an actual shallow end in there, and those little sloped roof sections worked out really nice for the transition from the shallow end down into the deep end. And of course, every good pool needs a diving board. I came up with this little stair set that I found, and then we built a little structure and put a little diving board on it. I think probably realistically, it's probably a little too much of a high dive for a pool at a public area like a hotel, but you know what? Whatever. I had somebody request maybe putting like a water slide in. If there was one place to put an actual water slide in, it probably would be back here. I'm still not completely sold on putting a water slide back here. I really don't want to, but we'll see. Like the next episode here, I have a lot of space to fill, and I was thinking of doing like a pool house or something over here, and that's probably not going to take up all of that much room, so I'll have to see what I can do. But like I said, I really didn't want to put a water slide in. It'd probably just be art pieces enclosing it all, but yeah, it's just one of those things. Planet Coaster doesn't have water slides. I don't really want to have to put one in, but as you can tell, I'm pretty indecisive about it. Anyway, before we do all that stuff, though, we have to make some access to this area. So we're putting some doors in back here that would connect to the public spaces of the hotel. Just the first floor like I was talking about. And we're putting a couple of these in. And again, we're not reinventing the wheel back here. We took the main entrance that we had, that little canopy thing, and we're basically just tweaking it to work back here. So it's one of those things where it kind of evolved over time, and it ends up looking pretty good, I think. It's a little weird in that, like, we're almost getting that little Tudor style again, which I'm not a huge fan of, as I've said, but it's kind of minimal. It's just a little door back here, so not too worried about it. And as you can see, the roofs that we have as pavement down here are actually on their separate building, so we can go ahead and adjust those ever so slightly to work for all of this. So yeah, there's a lot of space back here. I guess maybe you guys can help me out. I was very indecisive about the water slide situation. Maybe we'll do like a lazy river or something. Oh, that would be really cool. So yeah, let me know what we should put back in this empty space in the comments below. We'll figure something out. I'm not really sure what to do. Like I said, very much a lot of open space there to do something. And like I've been saying though, I don't really want to go over the top back here either. So something fairly simple would be recommended for something like that. I'm actually really liking the lazy river idea. Maybe we'll go through with that. But no, I think final thing we have to do right now back here is a little bit of detailing work. This time lapse is almost over. This I think is probably one of the longest time lapses I've done. So if you're still here, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Hey, yeah. But no, it's this is rough, man. This is a lot of air to fill here. But yeah, we're just outlining some of this stuff back here with some little pieces of wood that I found. Well, I didn't find, like, I've known about this a while, but really wanted to do something to keep guests on the paved areas and off of the little in-between garden sections. So we have the little wooden dividers, and then of course I found, again, I don't know why I keep saying I found, but we're using the little iron girder pieces, and we're actually tying all these down to the earth with some sort of bracket, which I think looks pretty cool. And it was really cool because I think up till now, the iron girders that we've used were more or less painted black, but these are painted shiny metal, which is nice. And yeah, this all comes together. And I think the final thing that we're going to be doing back here is throwing a few trees here and there. And that's pretty much it for this time lapse. So let's go ahead and kick it over into the live portion. And this is what you guys have been waiting for the entire episode. Let's go ahead and figure out what we just did. And we'll talk a little bit about the next couple episodes. All right, guys, we are live here in Cedar Flags, and we are taking a look at the beautiful hotel. Now, I did not mention, but we are going to have to name this hotel. So go ahead and leave your suggestions for the name down in the comments below, and we'll go through and figure that out. And I'm thinking that we might need some sort of sign, like right here. That would be really cool, especially because what you see when you drive in is basically that big main front of the hotel. So that's really cool. I actually, as I was going through and building this, I realized that this probably would not be the front of the hotel. Honestly, I think the grand entrance would probably be like over here if we were designing this properly. But because of the area constraints that we're working with here, it really just did not make a lot of sense for us to make the hotel look like, you know, with the wings coming off it this way and then another wing coming that way. So it'd basically be flipped around, but yeah, just because of where we are with everything, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So the main entrance is right here, a very strange build, I guess, if we're being honest, but it's beautiful. So, I mean, we can let it slide. Yeah, this is the whole thing now. This is a lot more parking now. I think we're probably over what we would realistically need in terms of parking, but like I said, more parking back here is probably for the best. But if we're looking back out here in the plaza of the hotel, we have this open space here, and my intention is to do some sort of like pool house here and a bar maybe with some sort of terrace overlooking the train tracks or something. That could be kind of cool here. Also, like I was talking a little bit about, I'm kind of all in on this lazy river idea around here. I think that could be really cool. So let me know what you guys think about what we should do with this. There's a lot of space here, so we have some options here. But yeah, that'll be the next episode, guys. I think that's pretty much it for this one. Thank you so much for watching the 50th episode of Cedar Flags. It's been so long. It's been years, and you guys are still watching it. Thumbs up to you. I give you a thumbs up if you've seen every single episode. That's amazing. We've built something incredible here, and we have a bit more to go. So I'm looking forward to it, guys. If you like this episode, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. If you disliked it, thumbs down, of course. And I'll see you back here for episode 51 of Cedar Flags.